Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue, and in this video I will be talking about the new Weight Map Falloff found in MODO 13. It actually may have been added in 12, but I think it was 13. And how I'm going to illustrate how that's different than the standard usage of weight maps with deformers and why it's better implemented as a falloff. So to do that, I've got this piece of geometry here, and I have a weight map on it. Whoops, I have this weight map on it right there, and I also have a morph map on it, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I'm going to start off by just adding a standard transform deformer. So I'm just going to click this button right here, and you'll see this turned yellow. And when I clicked that button, it did two things. And this is how deformations work in MODO. First of all, it added an influence, and this is also appears in the deformation stack here. Or actually, it used to be called the deformation stack. Now it's the mesh operations stack, right? Because now you can mix mesh operations, which create or destroy geometry, with deformers, which just manipulate existing points. And you can move those up and down and do all kinds of cool stuff with them in the stack. And there it is in the stack. And what it also did is it created this locator right here. And this transform effector is just a handle for the animator to move around. So if I have the transform effector selected and I just translate, I'm moving the entire pill here. I can scale it, I can rotate it. And you'll see that this influence has some options. Right now it's set to entire mesh. So when I move the locator, it moves the entire mesh. But just like joints or magnet effectors or bend effectors, it has, or bend deformers, it has options. And I can go from entire mesh to either like a point selection set or a polygon selection set or a part or a material or a weight map. And so if I select my weight map in here, and then I go back to my transform effector and we'll say scale, now everything is, all these deformations are attenuated by this weight map. And this is how, like bones work in all kinds of 3D programs, right? So, it's pretty standard 3D stuff. So why do we have a Falloff weight map? Well, or a weight map Falloff rather. Well, you see we have a Falloff slot here. And so what I'm going to do is just illustrate the difference between these two really quickly. So if I go back to my influence and change it back from weight map back to entire mesh, and now I'm just affecting the entire mesh again, right? So no attenuation. But I've got this Falloff slot. It also shows up here. And I can add a falloff, a weight map falloff into the falloff slot, and I can pick my weight map just like before. I'm actually going to select it over here so we can see it as well. And again, when I say scale this, this deformation is modulated by the falloff, which in this case is a weight map falloff. And so it's exactly the same effect that we had before when we were using the weight map here in the influence to attenuate the effect. But I have some more options with the falloff. And here and now it's yellow, so I can double click it and I can see my falloff in there. With my falloff, I can do a couple things. Once, I could just turn it on or off, or invert it if I want to. But I can also adjust the strength, so I can adjust the strength like this. Now these are things you cannot, let me turn off symmetry. These are things you cannot do if you're just using a weight map to attenuate the deformation within the influence. You don't have any of these options. And I can also adjust this stuff, sort of remap these effects with this gradient right here, which is pretty cool. I can even make this go full screen, and then I can do things like underdrive or overdrive these effects. And it's really pretty cool what you can do with it. And you just have a lot more, let's undo this stuff, you have a lot more control over your deformation using a weight map falloff versus using just the static weight map you find in the influence. So that's that. That's with the deformers. So you have a lot more control there. Secondly, there's a number of deformers that don't allow you to use weight maps at all. In fact, I always found this super limiting. I'm actually going to just unhook this stuff and get it out of there. And so, so here's our mesh, and this mesh also has a morph map on it. There's the morph map. And if I right click and say add morph influence, and there it is, let me just click that there. So here's my morph influence. And this did a couple of things. First of all, it added an influence, just like this general influence that was added by the transform deformer. But the morph influence is a little bit different and actually a little bit more limiting. And I never understood this, but why this was the case, but I don't have the same options under the morph influence that I have with a number of these other influences created with these deformers. I cannot pick a weight map to attenuate the morph. I'm stuck with just the straight up morph. And it's always been like that in MODO. You've never been able to use weight maps to say, attenuate morphs on a face or whatever you're doing. You've always been stuck with just radial fall-offs and other sorts of fall-offs. But now we have this weight map fall-off. I'm just going to hook it up in here. and put it in the Falloff spot there. And now we're using this weight map Falloff to, let me just put this back to 100%, to attenuate the morph, which we'd never had before. So now we can attenuate morphs with this Falloff, right? So you can use weight maps to attenuate morphs. So we've got a morph here, and I can adjust my morph strength, and I can adjust my remapping or strength of the weight map Falloff. And so it makes morphs a lot more powerful, really, because previously if you wanted to adjust a morph with a Falloff, you had to use something like a radio Falloff, and then that brings in all kinds of issues, like if you're doing a creature, you have to then constrain or parent the Falloff to the mesh to get it to move along with it. Now we're just using whatever weight maps you want. You can paint on there, and you can attenuate the Falloff or the morph effect with that weight map Falloff, and then you have all these other abilities as well to adjust the strength of it, or animate the strength of it, or invert it, or remap it with the gradient. So again, it's more powerful than just using the weight map selection in the influence. Additionally, we can use the same Falloffs for, let me just hide the weight, turn that back on. Additionally, we can use the weight map Falloff with mesh operations. So if I want to add a mesh operation to this guy, so I'm just going to add an operator and do like a just a polygon bevel, yeah, like this. And then if I want to, I'll turn off group polygons and then see if I can sort of push them out like that. Okay, cool. So we've got a polygon bevel going on. But again, this will utilize a Falloff. So I can just down click here. Now you don't see a Falloff slot like you do for these deformers. And I actually think that's a bit confusing to some people. What you do have is a tool pipe slot, and a tool pipe will accept a Falloff. So I can go add tool pipe, and I just go to existing, and here's my weight map Falloff that's already in the scene. I can select that, and now you can see it's just using, that bevel is only happening, or is happening, that bevel effect is attenuated by the weight map. So you can use these same weight map, not just for attenuating deformations, and even deformations that you weren't able to do before, like with morph deformations. You can also use them with any of these mesh operations that accepts a Falloff, which is a ton of different mesh operations. So again, using weight maps now for modeling in addition to deformation control is super useful. And you can even use them for texturing. So we can do a couple of things. One, I can just I didn't create a mask for this guy, so let me just create a item mask. So shade and create item mask, and then we got an item mask. And I'll just do a constant processing constant, and we'll just make this a color like, I don't know, about that color, sort of that purpley color. And great, so we can do a couple of things here. One, I can add, let me just actually duplicate this constant, and I'll make this one a complementary color there. Now what I can do is just add a, let's see, I believe it is I think it's processing, yeah, vertex map texture. I'm going to pick that same weight map that is existing there, wait for Falloff, did it automatically. And if I just drag it on top of this constant right here, it's going to automatically create a layer mask. There it is right there. Set to layer mask, and there it's now blending between the two. So we're using one weight map for deformations, we're using it for mesh operations, and we're also using it for texturing. So weight map Falloff, super useful, and very glad we can finally attenuate morphs with a weight map.
Yum, yum!